demonstrate enviable character. We are responsibility, resilience to defy all odds. Integrity, thank you. Integrity is our core values. Empathy, to understand and share in our members' attitude and all what emotion they are experiencing. Agility is part of our core values in AEHRP. What is our vision statement? We are to be the go-to source of competent human resource professionals who redefine the practice. AEHRP is here to redefine the practice of HR professionals across the globe. Our mission statement is to create value for human resource professionals and organizations through coaching, mentoring, and research-based learning and capacity development. AEHRP is known for this. Here we have mentors, we have coach, we have everyone that assists HR professionals across different sectors. And finally, what's our cardinal mandate? We are here to bridge the communal gap that exists between human resource professionals and the different cadres. Now we know that in the workplace, we have different cadres, baby boomers to the Gen Zs. Now we are seeing the Gen Alphas, like they say. We are also here to serve as a platform for learning capacity development, knowledge acquisition, and experience sharing. Like what we are having today is a special learning session. Yes, our special guest speaker for today, like I mentioned earlier, is Jesse Ogabu. Jesse is a strategic consultant who specializes in talent development, learning acquisition. Let me remove this here. Okay. Sorry, I lost the slide here. I know it's ready for us. Yes, it's going to take us through the future of HR, how we can transform the workplace. I'm here to read his profile to you before I call him on board. I'm supposed to share this now. I lost that on my slides. Okay. Okay. Albert, can you assist with his profile, please?
Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another session, another learning session. So today we have Jesse Ogabu.
Thank you.
Wow, I hope I got that right. Yes. So Jesse is a strategic consultant who specializes in development and learning innovations, as well as people analytics, with expertise expertise spanning across multiple industries. He helps organizations transform their workforce capability.
Okay.
Currently.
Okay.
I can't seem to hear the moderator. Is it only from me? Okay. All right. So just say, yeah, okay, the profile is
Apo-
Bob.
Apologies, apologies. I think I had a network disruption from my
It's
end. I don't know
okay.
that.
It's
So
it's okay.
JC currently works with M where he played a pivotal role in scaling operations, especially in developing and implementing comprehensive training programs in data analytics, strategic HR, digital transformation, lean operation, as well as business strategies. JC's leadership has helped organizations reach and transform over.
All right. Jesse is a well-known strategist, and we will not allow the connectivity to stop the flow. Let me just yield the floor to Jesse to take on. I'm sure we'll get all his profile from his conversation. So you have the floor. Jesse, over to you.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I understand that network could be a challenge at very critical times, so we completely understand. My name is Jesse Ogabu. I want to thank the management and the board and all the members of the Association of Allied Human Resource Professional for availing me this opportunity to share with everyone today. Sorry if I say morning. Currently not in Nigeria, so it's morning where I am. I understand that it's evening in Nigeria, so just in case I say morning, permit me on that. And just to help with the profile a bit, basically, I help scale organization talent via trainings. Okay, all right, great. I'm actually in the United States at the moment, and it's pretty much 10 minutes after 10 in the morning. I'm here. And I'll share. I'll share. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'll share the work that we're also currently doing here, as well. So I want to thank everyone, thank the board, thank the management for this privilege to share, and I do not take it for granted. I'll start with an opener. Since this year started, I've been conducting a lot of research, writing articles, and just to understand how the workplace is actually being shaped. And I mean, conducting surveys, understanding from, of course, we have a base in Nigeria and also setting up fully here. And that led me to, putting together what the future of HR will look like, especially in 2025. And now organizations and HR professionals need to, own their skills and also be more like putting your ears on the ground and doing what you need to do to stay relevant. The workplace is completely changing. There's a lot of shifts coming from the US perspective, yeah, with a lot of tariffs, a lot of imbalance across different sector, stock markets going down, and all. It tells that the workplace is undergoing a lot of accelerated changes, given the fact that also AI is also playing a very, very big role. So it has become necessary that HR needs to align strongly with business leaders to ensure that business still stay relevant at this time. And that led me to writing that article saying, you know what, this is from my research, this is what I think what the future of HR will look like in 2025. And I'll be making that presentation this evening. So you might see me moving my eyes. I have a screen where I'll be sharing the slide and the screen where I'll be presenting. And for the screen where I'll be sharing the slide, I mean, the video on the system got bad. So I cannot present from that system, but I would use that as my slide just to keep us aware in case you see me moving my eyes. I will share my slide now if I have the permission to do that. Yeah, please confirm that you can see my screen. All right, great. I have from okay, great. I think we are on. Yeah, thank you again. Yeah, I would like to take a poll. At this time, I want to know just with a show of hands how much you are actually utilizing AI in your current role. I'm trying to narrow it to your current role as HR professionals. How much are you using AI? With a show of hands. How much are we using AI? I'm going to the chat section. All right. Yeah. Okay. With a show of hands, how much? Okay, I see. Okay. Can we get more? Okay, I see. Great. Awesome. Oh, someone is not using AI. Okay. All right. Good. Not much. Okay. Okay, I see. Good. I'm sure after this session, aside from our professional lives as professionals, from an organization perspective, it's essential that we begin to look into harnessing the power of AI in our different roles. It's one thing that it does is improving efficiency, and then it actually also enable you actually become more productive. And we'll go into all of all that because that's like the hallmark. And from an organization perspective, we'll also see that in the course of this presentation. Okay, so what we will be talking about. So these are the learning objectives. One, and the course of this training, we'll be able to initiate digital transformation on HR functions, which is actually very important. Implement innovative HR strategies to enhance employee experience. Also leverage data-driven decision-making to optimize workforce planning, and then develop leadership capabilities to drive change in HR practices. And also to foster a culture of continuous learning and adaptability. I'm very excited that that's like one of the core values of this association, continuous learning. They say stay foolish and keep learning, and that's just the arc actually, because things are actually rapid change in innovation and how it's been infused into our workplace is actually taking it's on the very steep end. You wake up today, there is one innovation. You wake up tomorrow, there's another innovation driven by AI, automation, and the likes. But more importantly, and what we also get from this conversation is seeing how to augment AI with human practices, because sometimes one of the key challenges of AI is the biases that can be built into it, which can actually affect outcomes. And that's what one of the things we say. So you have AI, and then the human interface has got to be brought together into one, not just the AI aspect, but there has to be an human element in it. And that's where human resource professionals come into play, where we interface with different functions in the workplace such that we're able to coalesce and support business leaders, even as business leaders ourselves, and also ultimately the business as a whole, to stay competitive, stay resilient, and innovative. These three key things are actually, they are very important for every organization at this time. So 3 things we need to note. I think I'm having a bit of distraction on my screen here. Let me just focus on the slide. Yeah. So the first thing is HR is shifting from administrative role to strategic leadership. And that's very key. Be it wherever you are on the stack, on the HR stack, on the HR ladder, whether you're just getting into the HR profession or you are at the pinnacle of your HR profession, it's clear that it's not just an administrative function anymore. It's more strategic, and the way you can actually be strategic, and for the purpose of this conversation, it's leveraging the power of data to make informed decisions. And that's one of the things I actually help via AnyPro. I know I didn't talk about AnyPro in the course of my introduction, to train organizations on how to leverage HR analytics to make informed decisions. That's a go-to. That's a key tool that we need to actually know, regardless of the aspect of HR that you're actually functioning in. Either you're a specialist or a generalist, you need to be able to harness the power of data in your organization. For example, there was a fintech company that we had an engagement with at some point, and then they were trying to infuse a hybrid work place culture, and they were unclear on how to go about it because, I mean, different employees come in at different times due to traffic, they stay far, and what have you. But at the end of that section, they were able to use data to understand the average time that it takes an employee to report to the office at different times of the week. And they actually built a robust working plan that ensured that gave flexibility for their employees to come in at a certain, I mean, they infused, they demarcated it such that some employees would be able to be in the office from Mondays to Wednesdays, some from Wednesdays to Fridays, you know, and they like, so they were able to do that systemically such that I improved the performance of the employees and their productivity. So that's important. It's just to speak to the fact that HR is shifting from being an administrative role as we've known in the past, you know, to being more on the side of being a strategic leader. Second thing to also note is that the key trends in AI that we also need to take out of this session as well. How AI is actually impacting our different functions, and how it will also keep on impacting our different, whether we like it or we don't like it, is the era that we are in, and we have got to look critically into it and see how to harness that power. I mean, couple the fact that I've seen this play out in this market, where organizations are actually leveraging AI in their recruitment process to ensure that they get quality talents, you know, and also reduce their recruiting time, and that actually helps manage or save costs for the organization. So this presentation covers emerging trends and essential training modules for HR professionals. There are about 7 modules, right? I don't know if time will permit to really go deeply into each of the modules, but I'm sure we'll take key lessons from each of these modules, and then maybe we can take the conversation further after now. So looking at the key trends in HR that we need to, I mean, if you don't take anything from this session, I mean, you need to really understand what's trending. So yeah, I think one of the TV stations, you know, there's what's trending. One is AI in HR. Like I had mentioned earlier, the power of automation and human function has come to coalesce, right? As much as we use your ERP systems from different providers and the likes, which they are currently building into its very high AI power, right? You also need to understand what works in your organization, you know, as a human resource professional. I mean, for instance, you work in recruiting, right? You help your organization recruit talent, or maybe a recruitment consultant. As much as you use those tools, remember, biases can be built into those tools, right? It could be a gender bias, it could be location bias, it could be racial bias in some clients. You know, you need to be able to understand what really works for your organization in terms of what really works in your organization, and then aligning it with whatever AI systems you are using, or whatever automative system you're using. Of course, one of the essence of automation is to be able to be more efficient and streamline processes, but you've got to put your HR hat to know, you know, what should be or what should not be, such that when you're deploying those softwares into your organization, which is actually important, you know, to have those softwares, you know, drive efficiency, you also need to be able to bake in what works for your organization. Next is a skill ecosystem. I mean, it's a skill economy where talents are scarce, you know, for different reasons. And now it's reduced in terms of people living the shore of the country, you know, but of course, there are a lot of gig workers around now. And I mean, as an HR leader, you've been able to create a sustainable balance between full-time staff, gig workers, and contract staff, such that the motivation across these 3 different categories of workers for your organizations is actually balanced, and they can also work together. You know, you find out that in some organizations, especially in the oil and gas industry, you find out that you have a lot of contract workers and the likes. And if you really look at it critically, some of them don't feel. I know I have a couple of friends who they feel they are a bit left out, you know, on some plans, which we'll talk about when it comes to compensation and how they are being treated. At this time, as an HR professional, you need to, you know, ensure that you are creating a balanced system such that no one feels less of themselves. I mean, because the honest truth is some of the people who call contract staff actually have are actually very competent to take on some jobs that even full-time employees take. So how do you create that balance such that, because you need them to function based on your talent budgets, workforce planning for that given period, right? You need to be able to create a system that balances these three different categories of workers for your organization. It's actually important because sometimes you need some people for short-term contracts, but you also want to ensure that as much as they are in for short-term contracts, they also feel well valued. They feel well engaged and well incorporated in the system such that they can give their utmost best. And I've talked about hybrid work, right? By creating that scenario between gig workers, full-time employees, and contract workers. Next is also well-being. I mean, we're at the time where a lot of things, political climates in some climes are it's challenging for a lot of people. I mean, of course, people actually get to work because they just have to go to work, and it's has now become a prerogative for HR professionals to actually help ensure that the well-being of their staff, employees, regardless of their status in the organization, are well looked into. A more robust plan, is actually needed to keep these people happy. I mean, you don't want someone who is supposed to, maybe for instance, you work in a bank, yeah, and you want someone who you recruited to be receiving a call to a customer and they're not treating the customer right because it's a bit frustrated. Or maybe it could even be working in finance, and instead of posting 2 million naira or whatever the currency is, and then adding 2 zeros, and then what you see in the news is someone has made error. I mean, it happened in one of the top banks, Citibank, recently, that they mistakenly transferred that many millions of dollars. I mean, those are the kind of consequences that arise when your people are not taken care of. Where sometimes our businesses want to maximize value, shareholders' value. That's important here, but your people are actually the business, right? You have your products, your services, but the people that drive those products and services are actually your competitive advantage. We'll talk about that when we get into slide, saying that your workforce are actually your competitive advantage. The next is people analytics. Exactly, Pennywise powerful here. The next is people analytics. Trust me, you perhaps might not have taken people analytics serious, prior to now. But if you want to make strategic decisions and own your data, you need to infuse a lot of strategic HR analytics or people analytics into your system. You need to have a dashboard that tracks if it's recruiting, tracks performance. You need to understand what makes these things, right? And of course, there are systems that actually builds these things, right? But you also need to know what data, because everything is really around the data that is fed into the system. What data you are collecting, we'll see all data sources in the course of this presentation. But I'm just trying to keep this is a high level of this presentation, such that if we don't even get to the end of this presentation, but if you have this and critically look into the different pointers, you stay ahead of the curve. So infusing predictive analytics, we'll go into the type of analytics, and how to look at it and how it actually influences your decision-making process. From what has happened, right, which is looking at what has happened in the past, and then looking at that data, performing some diagnostics on the data that you have, and saying from this is what we are expecting. More like you can place some probabilities into possible outcomes and say if this happens, more like a decision tree. If we are in this scenario, this is possible. There are 20% chances that this is going to happen. There's 50% chance that this is going to happen, and there's 30% chance that this is going to happen. And it helps you know where to actually prioritize and put resources in. I mean, ultimately resource allocation, in that given example. The next is workforce management. No organization will thrive without a solid workforce. Not even at this time. No organization will thrive without a solid workforce. I mean, we saw it in the banks, in Nigerian banks recently, when they saw that their tech talent are actually leaving, and they realized that you see transfers, pending transfers, customers actually losing money, and a lot of downtime. It shows that regardless of their balance sheet, some of these banks have big balance sheets, but I mean, with talent migration, it became a very big challenge for them to actually handle. So your workforce management and planning, succession planning is actually very, very important. And I'm sure, I think I follow a bit of some organizations that actually had to begin to look into workforce succession planning. It's actually very, very important because people would move, right? People would stay. And in the economy that we are in currently, especially with the Gen Zs, Gen Zs are not like the baby boomers who typically will stay for a long time and looking at pension and the likes. Gen Zs, they have different kind of aspirations, different kind of thinking. They're brought up differently, in social media environments, So you've got to really plan for that. Whether you're a small size, mid-size, a very large organization, you perhaps might be doing it, but not robust enough, right? If that's the case for you, then you need to critically look into it and then plan, for your workforce, because your workforce is actually the engine that drives your business. The next thing is inclusive leadership, and which brings us to diversity, equity, and inclusion. How diverse. I mean, this is a challenge currently in the US, probably with current administration around diversity and trying to dial back on DEI. But I mean, that's just a political, razzmatazz, that the current government is trying to pull, but more critically, what we have seen, what data has actually shown is that the more diversity you have in your workforce and in your organization, right, the better chances you have for success and high performance. And we'll see that with Salesforce actually doing that. We'll see a couple of case studies in the course of the presentation. So in summary, these key trends are things to look out for. Think deeply on it and then begin to work on it personally and also as an organization. Now let's get into the main conversation for today, right? Which one of the first module is HR in digital age. As you can see, this is the mini dashboard, right? And it's just to help us visualize where we are in terms of our HR is interfacing with the current digital space that we are currently. If you realize, if you look back at pre-COVID and post-COVID period, I mean, we have almost 5 years post-COVID, right? We even see that pre-COVID and just few years beyond COVID, let me get more specifics. 2018, from 2016 to 2019, then we had COVID, and then from COVID of 2020, then 2021, 2022. Now, 2021 and 2022, what we had then relative to 2025, now it's different because we didn't have GPTs, we didn't have Geminis, we didn't have AI. We didn't have those softwares. Organizations were not looking into, aligning with the current AI trend. So you see that the workplace landscape is changing in a rapid way, and you have to, as an organization, you have to be ready, even as professionals too, HR professionals, you have to also be ready to, be resilient, innovative, and competitive. I mean, whether you like it or not, you have got to build these 3 metrics into your organization because you have competitors, right? How are you looking at your competitors? What do they have that you don't have? What systems are they harnessing? Of course, there are competitors that have deep pockets, but what do you have? It could be talents that you have that is your competitive advantage. How do you harness that to, stay relevant? I mean, you see, I mean, I read something recently around how some tech firms are actually cutting short the talents of young people. They tend to give them very big roles, and then over time they fold up. And I think a couple of firms like that. I mean, I think I've seen about 3 in the last 3 months. I think one. I mean, just happens like one every month. You just hear of one firm has laid off about 2,000 people because they've seen ways to reduce cost and the likes. I mean, the honest reality is that these things happen, right? But if you are prepared for it, you will not be a victim of it. That's the point. Now, from what we see on the slide here, with harnessing AI, right, or harnessing automation and innovation, hiring speed is actually dropped by 30%, right? Because I mean, you can go on Indeed, you can go on LinkedIn, and then place a job, make a job post there, and several other job boards, and then you would, I'm sure to a large extent, the kind of, for some kind of roles, the kind of applications you will receive in a second, I'm not sure. So I think I know a friend who said, so they put out a job ad on their LinkedIn page, and then within 5 minutes, they got over 300 applications. And by the time they came back the next day, it was just ridiculous. They had to actually shut it down, close down that portal, and then harness AI in doing the screening and the likes. We usually know of the ATS system, but I mean, there are more sophisticated systems that actually help in doing that streamlining. And that's actually has reduced hiring speed or hiring time by 30%. And then in terms of candidate quality, of course, a lot of people are getting more exposed, to artificial intelligence, and owning their skills properly as it relates to how the current workplace is being shaped. And as we have here, 25%, it's been reported that 25% of candidate quality across different industries due to the fact that organizations are actually leveraging AI and automation in their respective processes. So what this is saying essentially is that if you are not, I mean, that's why I took the poll when we started. If you are not leveraging these tools, I'll call them tools, or these enablers, because they're actually enablers. They're not the end product, but they actually enable efficiency and productivity, and also competitiveness as well. I'm based in the States, right? And I have actually observed critically how folks are leveraging on AI tools to be competitive. For instance, JP Morgan built in an AI stack, within their organization. I mean, you use GPTs and all, they built in their own internal LLM, to ensure that they are keeping things within their ecosystem and also being competitive. And that's why among the banks, in global banks, I mean, JP Morgan is a global bank. We call it call Citi, call Morgan Stanley and the likes. And because they are able to achieve this, they are really staying competitive in that line. So that's just a case study. What that means is, I mean, some of these things comes at a cost, or you have to find a way on your budgets, and plan for different kind of scale to stay competitive. Because I mean, I think, was it last year, December, JP Morgan is trying to open a branch in Kenya. Imagine having that kind of expansion in Africa, and they have the banks that have like the biggest balance sheet, globally. What are you going to do as a bank? They have billions of dollars, and then you have billions of naira. It's not the same. So finding ways to incorporate these tools at this time is key to staying competitive. The next is engagement index. What AI has done is with different tools, with different community tools, for instance, we're on a Zoom call. I mean, this is part of automation, right? We can have this conversation. Also, in your different organizations as well, you have mini chat systems, mini ERP systems, where you, Jira, there's some collaboration tools like Jira, Asana, and the likes, that you use in your organization. You find out that this has actually helped you improve employee engagement. As HR professionals, being on those platforms, Slack and the likes, it's brought a lot of more inclusion and integration in the way you communicate, and you even understand the pain points of your employees, right? And research has it that 60% of engagements, employee engagement has been improved. In terms of AI utilization, it's still not, I mean, it's coming up, right? But if this is 2025, this is still first quarter. By the time we get to maybe, I mean, fourth quarter, because the way the race for AI is interesting. That's the word to use, because you have different competing organizations, and even on a global scale, different countries trying to stay, at the edge when it comes to being the leader in AI. It shows that a lot of research is actually going on to improve, on the current models or AI stack that's available. So the summary of this is that HR professionals, they have got to, try to understand these tools and how to harness them properly for the advantage of our organization or the businesses that we function in. Now, key things to note here. AI as an augmented to enhancing human capabilities. I mean, like I said, when I started this conversation, is you need to look at AI and look at the human aspect, not just AI, because of course, different biases will built into those different systems, and then you need to find a way to incorporate what works for your organization. Also, natural learning processing enables HR professionals generate personalized learning content. you want to develop a learning plan, right? You can, with the help of NLPs, NLP is actually built into your AI systems, right? That gives you that productive power in generating content and the likes, helps you structure and aligns it properly. So in case you don't use it or you maybe forbid using it, you have to look at it differently. And I'll give a typical example. There's some schools, some global schools who had issues with their students using AI, at different points, but then later realized that it is better that they incorporate this into their system such that they are able to harness the full potential, because AI has come to stay. There's a Stargate project by the current government, the current US government, about how many million, I think over $1 billion or so to accelerate AI advancement. And they're looking at DeepSeek, China is also doing same, trying to also stay competitive. So if these global powers are actually doing that and their companies are actually fueling this investment, it shows that there is something to look into. As much as we're in an emerging market, right? Emerging market is the destination, because most of the markets that were the destination prior to now are already clustered. So where the attention would be channeled to in the next few years will be the emerging markets. And now is the time to really position for those engagements when they start fully. Like I talked about JP Morgan trying to set up a branch in Kenya. Why not Nigeria? So if they're in Kenya, not Nigeria, it means that at some point Nigeria might also come into the play. So, and when they come into the play as a bank, you might have the biggest customer base by asset and whatever but when they come with money at that level and with massive technology supported, from their central base, it'll be difficult to compete with them. So now is the time to really look into these technologies and see how based on your company's budget, because of course some of these things run on budget, to see how you can harness it. I mean, it's more like a change management process, which we'll also talk about in the course of this conversation. It's not a steep change, it's a gradual change. You look at the trends and see, okay, how do we make these aspects? How do we automate these aspects? How do we leverage this aspect? How do we leverage that aspect? And the likes. It's very, very important that we do these things. For instance, that most of us use ERP solutions like QuickBooks and the likes, and we have local ERP systems. Now, those ERP systems that we're using in a relative to, I know QuickBooks is by Intuit, right? Now, Intuit are currently building an LLM system into their ecosystem, such that it's going to be fused into their different products. And then when you have that, giving you that massive, you have as a finance person, you're using their product as an accountant, and then they're with the use of those products, AI is actually helping to leverage, give you better analysis, better presentations and the likes. And then you are a competitor, and then your competitor is using that kind of product, and you are not using that kind of product. I mean, there's going to be on the bottom line of the both organization, you will see the discrepancies. It will be clear, in terms of turnaround time, in terms of even engagement, and in terms of knowing what to do, because data actually helps you, become more strategic. Then the next is around sophisticated succession planning, around employee engagement, performance management, and learning and development. I will always say your workforce is your competitive advantage, and you have got to really own that aspect of your business. I mean, what will a business do if they don't have people, to drive it? Not just people, competent people, skilled people. And that's why you looked at one of the trends, skilled ecosystem, so you have to leverage AI in designing a sophisticated succession planning. I mean, a few years ago, people were actually leaving the country, and the likes was a challenge because there was no proper succession planning. It came as, let's say, deja vu or something. What's going on? Everyone just what's happening. But I mean, I think that should be an eye opener. That at every point in time, you build your workforce, those who have the tendencies and capabilities to actually lead a organization or lead a particular role, begin to build them such that if there is any move, right, you don't feel that immediate impact. And another school of thought is, I mean, you don't also want to, as an HR professional, you don't also want to allow. Okay, is someone asking a question?
No, sorry, I got a question. I mean, can you ask?
Okay, you don't want to be at the mercy of. I don't know, Nyechi, can you please help us mute your mic? Yeah, you don't want to be at the mercy of one staff or two staff. You don't want to be at the mercy of one staff or two staff. You need to also learn to try as much as possible to build talents that can actually take over should anything happens. There's a lot of talent migration. Anything can happen at any point in time. Exactly. Anything can happen at any point in time. You need to be prepared for it. And take, for instance, because I converse with a lot of folks, you know, I know one particular fintech company who has one of their very strong financial person, and this particular person is eager to leave. You know, I mean, it's eager to leave, and if the person leaves within the next 2-3 months, you know, it's going to really impact the business. You know, you don't want that kind of situation, you know, in your organization, especially when it comes to finance. So as an HR leader, whether you are just coming in or you are the mid-level or you are the senior level, you need to really work on that to ensure that the business is not at the mercy of a staff. Now, if I have said how to look at things, I need to also talk about how to implement these things. Is important because these are like the takeaway. So from that, the implementation framework, take it as a takeaway. Now, I outlined 4 different ways, you know, you can actually, you know, implement this in your organization. If you don't have it, if you have it, you can also look at it again to see if it's robust enough. And we have a case study here to see that some organizations are actually doing this. And if an organization is doing this, it shows that, I mean, it is possible. One, you need to conduct an AI readiness assessment to be sure if your organization is built in or is ready for the changes that's going to be happening in AI. It's going to be accelerated, right? There's going to be accelerated changes across different industries, and we have to be ready for it. Now, for instance, let me give you a typical example. There are some firms that were training software engineers, you know, to deploy talents to advanced economy. Now they're actually facing a lot of challenge, you know, and one of the ways they're actually working on is if you're a junior developer, I mean, they will not take you on. You know, I think one of the firms actually lost a lot of money in that process, you know, a lot of investments, you know, trying to push that agenda, and now actually has to pivot to another area. So just to let us know that at every point in time, you know, the changes is actually possible, actually at this day and time. And with the way these 2 global powers, the United States and China, they are racing really hard, and everything sits on research and development. That's where all the breakthroughs actually happen. When you have a strong research and development team, unit, institutes, and the likes, a lot of things can happen. All of a sudden, we woke up to DeepSeek. All of a sudden, we woke up to ChatGPT. All of a sudden, woke up to different things. You wake up tomorrow to something. How are you prepared for it? You know, you need to be prepared for these things. The next thing is to develop an AI ethics committee. I mean, it really sits on biases. You know, I mean, different regions will bring their bias. If you have a typical system, you know, that is not localized, right, you'll see that some of these advanced countries will build biases into their system. So if you are going to be deploying those kind of systems into your own localized environments, there might be a mismatch, you know, and you need to, and that's one of the key challenges of AI that's being currently discussed across different climes, is how ethical AI is, and all that's a bit around biases, because human beings will have different biases. Like I mentioned earlier, location bias, region bias, and what have you. So you need to sit down and really build what works for your organization, and serves as a working document that when you are now infusing AI into your systems, it is checking out for these different things, you know, at different points in time. The next thing is implement a staged AI deployment. You don't want it to be, this is sit around change management. You don't want to, you know, just I mean, it's even expensive to even do sometimes for some of the systems. You can't just deploy, for instance, your and that when we discuss data governance and the likes, it comes into this kind of conversations that people have rights and access to different layers of maybe information or tools or what have you. Some people at some point might not need it. And I'm talking, I mean, broadly around organizations, as an organization now, some people might not need some tools, so you build it gradually, because sometimes these tools can be expensive, but they make you efficient and also competitive. Next is to create a feedback loop. If you are deploying these systems, you deploy it in bits, right? I mean, you can even be among the management team, deploy it among the management team. It could be a team of 4 or 5, it could be a 2GT team. Deploy the systems and see how it works, get feedbacks. And then with that feedbacks, you improve on the solution and then increase the sample size again of people who would be able to test it and see if it works fully and gets their feedbacks. And with feedbacks, feedback actually helps improve the system. Now, a typical case study is what Microsoft is doing. They established an AI council that's created a very tough governance framework. And what that did is, in terms of adopting AI systems in Microsoft, it's actually improved adoption rate by 65%. And then employees' trusts as well. I mean, employees could see that the leadership were actually very deliberate in ensuring that they are carried along, in their career journeys, because sometimes deploying some of these systems will shift careers, and if there are a lot of massive layoffs, even, I mean, in the US, yeah, there are a lot of layoffs, and then what you hear on those layoffs is, oh, we're trying to align with the AI, whatever, and that makes a lot of people panic, because I mean, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and find out I don't have my job anymore. So what do you do as an organization, right? You need to be able to enable your employee, your people, your talents. You need to carry them along. And even if you, of course, sometimes layoffs are unavoidable, right? But they will also say the reason why they also need to skill up to be in line with the business objectives. So 2 things you are doing: you're enabling your system, you're also enabling your people. Remember, even if people leave, there are different ways people exit, whether they retire, resign, they get fired or whatever. But even if they leave, there's a truth to it, and then you help them become better ambassadors of your organization. So these things are, and that's it really around the umbrella of employee experience. You want the experiential process to be, transparent enough for your employees to, take the hard hits. Sometimes these things needs to be done, when they have got to be done, but they see it as a means to, improve themselves and become better. And they further speak to the fact that you give them the opportunity to be better, as against saying the fact that you lay them off. So just looking at it from this different prism, and you can actually help them, even as much as as a business leader, you're trying to maximize shareholder value. You're also trying to also, look out for your people, because I mean, these people being laid off are actually, they actually are families. They are human beings. They are not just numbers. 2,000 people got laid off. Those are human beings that they have responsibilities and different things to, take care of. So if you begin to see it in that light, it actually helps them, and also keep them on their toes to, be better. It could even be, I mean, sometimes employees can be resistive in upskilling themselves, but if they see these changes that you are making deliberately to improve the business, they would also be more geared up, to upskill themselves. It could be sometimes the business might decide to, through their skilling budgets, train and upskill them, or they could even take it upon themselves to actually get upskilled. I mean, to bring this home, you might want to ask that, okay, we have AI, how can we, get these skills sets right? I mean, as little as prompt engineering, being able to, you have different AI tools. I mean, some they are free. If you check some of them, and then knowing how to use the right prompts, that's one area. That's like a stable stick. That's like an entry point. Starting that's something you can learn on your own, even without being sponsored by your organization. And it's going to help you to be better and well positioned. I was on a call with someone yesterday, and then, I mean, so what seemed to be, if you think about it, it doesn't look like a great idea, like, oh, we are trying to, for those looking for an opportunity, right? In terms of if you're on the call, you are tired of applying for roles because it's taking your time. You're unable to focus on other things. You're not even unable to even prepare for interviews, and you just see where things have actually moved. And then what they are currently designing, or they've even test run it, is to see that, oh, you're too busy to apply for roles. Oh, why don't we help you to apply for roles? Help you to apply for roles. We have a sit down with you one-on-one, more like coaching session. I know Dr. Mike does a lot of coaching for career coaching, but this is now for recruitment. We sit down with you, understand what your needs are, and then we work with you in your job search, and maybe you also want to pivot, and help you to accelerate those applications, what you need to do, and help get you prepared. And I mean, I was just listening to the different conversions, even people even getting gig jobs, I was like, oh, this is really great. So sometimes we don't want to, as professionals, we are, of course, the economy can bite a bit and the likes, right? But if you don't have the skill set, there is nothing anyone can do about it. And in getting that skill set, you need to take responsibility for it. And people doing that, from what I was hearing yesterday, was really very, very interesting to see that that concept is actually working really. And over time we'll see that in this space. This is a mini group, a team of people who started this, and they are actually helping a lot of people actually get different jobs, coaching them, sitting with them, supporting them along the line in their journeys, automating that process and systems. Of course, I don't have the full gist of their internal process, but this is what they are doing, leveraging the power of AI, and a lot of people are getting different opportunities. So the summary of this is be flexible, and also help yourself, when you need to. Don't 100% wait for organizations to help, upskill you. The ones that you can do, by yourself, for yourself, you should try as much as possible to do it. Next, let's look at employee engagement and experience. It's very key for boosting motivation and productivity, talent retention, and also looking at the general workplace well-being. How do employees get engaged, from their application process, to the interview, to they being onboarded, and then they begin to grow through the ladder. As HR professionals, we need to ensure that we make this process. We've been hearing, and we know a lot of, we hear a lot of terms, around the employee engagement. It's not the first time we're hearing this. There's a thing to hear, there's one thing to hear, and there's another thing to actually implement in your organization. You find out that, sometimes the economy can be biting, from, the macroeconomic space in Nigeria is not funny, no doubt. And then businesses could be aggressive in making some kind of decisions. But remember that every touch point that an employee has with the organization is actually very, very important, and their general overall experience actually would help. Even the ones that you would have after you have done all the gymnastics of reducing talent and whatnot, you need them to be motivated enough to perform optimally, and the like. So key things to take here in terms of strategies to boost employee engagement is, one is set clear goals for the employee. Ensure that you are infusing employee autonomy. There's some things you want them to, be able to take initiatives themselves. That's how you create employees who are leaders. Allow them take initiative. Watch, step back a bit and see how they are going to, perform on some functions that you've given them. And of course, mentorship and peer learning is what you don't take out of it. And that's where associations like this association, Association of Allied Human Resource Professionals, come to play, where there's a lot of professionals who can actually help, talents, regardless, everyone needs a coach or a mentor, regardless of where you are in your different careers. And you find a lot of people here who, in this association, who would actually help on that. So what I'm saying essentially is, as an organization or as an HR woman professional, when you find yourself in needing this kind of support, you know where to go to. Also, talent retention is important. Like I said, talent is your competitive edge as an organization. So in terms of ensuring that you retain talents that are key to your business, you need to, because your competitors will poach those talents if you don't, sit up on in that area, just in case you feel that you can discard anybody you want to discard, normal. Or I mean, I run the show here, and you can go stay, but be mindful if that we're in a time where people have access to internet resources, and all they need to do is just upskill themselves to the point where they become, what everybody wants, so you need to ensure that you have a very strong talent retention strategy for your organization, hinged on skills, because that's where you compete on. The next is leadership training and succession planning. It's actually very, very important. If every employee in your organization wears the heart of a leader, you will find out that when you come to appraisal period, you would have majority of your employees performing beyond your expectation. And that's where leadership training and succession planning comes into play. Take, for instance, you have an employee who is a top talent, and then you have others who look up to that employee, and then they see the top talent knows that it's very good, but is also aware that there are people who are being built, such that they are also able to perform optimally. You find out that kind of talent, no matter how skilled he is, will not misbehave, because he knows that the organization is deliberate, in ensuring that their talents are actually, skilled enough to take up the whatever function that is needed. And you find out that what that top talent is doing is majorly the supervisory, because every other person is harmed well to take on the job. So you have less capital flight risk, when you're able to build that in your organization. It's very important. Another thing is employee feedback. You need to, at every point in time, ensure that so that you know what is going on. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know, and that's where employee engagement comes into place. You want to know what they are saying, what your people are saying, what the pain points is, or what they are, and then knowing that you have that data at different points in time, it helps you know how to think and how to plan, and how to reshape, your workforce such that it stays, it stays tough enough for and resilient enough for this economy. I mean, I'm looking for a word to describe the current economy, and I try to be very conservative. It's actually a very tough economy, when you look at it from a macroeconomic perspective. And that's why HR professionals need to be, at the forefront in ensuring that, and also business leaders must ensure that HR should have a seat at the table, such that in those shaping those business strategy and plans, HRs are actually in those meetings to help redesign a lot of workforce planning, retention strategy, and what have you, to ensure that okay, someone saying something? To ensure that the business is resilient enough. I speak strongly of resilient enough because I have seen, organizations in the US, like I mentioned a few, who are actually suing some majors, that they're encroaching into their space. And that's because it's biting their market cap. So that's why I'm speaking of resilience enough. You need your talent. It's really biting their, and they know that if they don't do this at this time, I can mention a few because they are public news. Deal and Ripple, their HR planning organization, or HR ERP solutions, right, based in San Francisco. I mean, there's lots going on. You can see Chegg and also Google. You see that this organization, they already know. So if you don't have if you are not built for resilience, you find out that you might be off the market if your care is not taken. So ensure that you have a very solid feedback loop to understand what's going on and where to take action when needed. Also, employee well-being is also very important. It's a time where mental health is a big deal. Then you want to ensure that there's a lot of resources, a lot of counseling sessions, and I would also tie it back to this association who has robust resources in that area. In case you don't have any or you lack any of that, you need to consult them. In case you're joining this call and then you are looking for how to get coaches, mentors, in these different areas, reach out to the leadership of this association. Okay, so there are different I'm just going to stay on the highlights on this so that I don't, so I can, it's a long presentation, right? But it has a lot of myths to help us, think, about HR in 2025. So how do you implement a robust employee engagement strategy in your organization? One, first is there needs to be an assessment that needs to be conducted. You need to understand where you are currently, and itemize the different things you need to do in each of these different buckets. Then the next is you then draft out a strategy. You define the vision and the approach. If you remember when we started this conversation actually shared the vision and the mission. Very critical, so that even if you're a new joiner or even if you're still a member, you are able to always have that at the back of your mind what the vision and the mission statement is. So you've got, because that helps you drive, map out the strategy that's required to stay innovative, competitive, and resilient. Then the next thing is personalization and program design. Then you're tailoring down into the different initiatives that needs to be done, to ensure that you drive, a robust or high employee engagement, because you want that and better experience for your employee. And the next you want to look at is the implementation and integration. You have these pockets of different initiatives, how do you implement it so that, remember, everything has got to tie to the overall business objective, then the next is continuous monitoring and improvements, right? Because things will change, informations will change, there are different workplace dynamics will change, market disruptions could also happen as well. So you need to, be well, look through the loop again to see what you need to do at different points in time. It should not be a one size fits all. I think that's the message. You should compartmentalize it, such that each aspect of your organization, or your people, right, they are looked into, properly taken care of, right? And also, the overall goal is to ensure that it aligns with the business objectives. The next thing is data-driven HR decision making. I will not belabor you too much on this, but what I can want us to take away from this is that data is important, extremely important. The AI you hear of today is built on data. Now, in case we don't know, I know a lot of people know this, but in case you don't know, the GPTs you hear of, the cloud AI you hear of, the Geminis, the DeepSeek and the likes, they are built on data that you supply these platforms. Even WhatsApp that you use, right, is built on data. You see that WhatsApp now, there are tools that can make it speak Pidgin. How does WhatsApp speak Pidgin? How's that possible? It's because these systems work on data. Data is a bedrock of how these systems will perform optimally. If there's no data, the AI can't do anything, because there's what they call training of data. Train the model, train the data, and the like. So you have to ensure that you're gathering enough data in your organization at different points in time. And where are the data sources? If you don't take anything from this presentation, as regarding the data-driven HR decision making, data sources, where to find them: employee surveys, performance review, HR systems and payroll data, social and collaboration networks. Very key. How people interact in your organization, the kind of patterns, the things they say, how does it align with the overall vision or the business objectives or goal of that unit? What kind of biases have infused into those conversations. So you need to design your system such that you're able to capture these data as an HR professional. Then stay ahead of it. Prepare. We move into more prescriptive, right, on what to do. I think I need to even just explain the different stages of data, or call it that, stages of data. Yes, the descriptive parts, the diagnostic parts are you're looking backwards. This has happened. So, for instance, these are the kind of conversations that are going on in the workplace, and it's not in alignment with the vision and mission of the organization. The next thing is then you pick those data. They can be unstructured data, right? There's structured and unstructured data. It could even be from email conversations and the likes. And then you begin to analyze and see, okay, so, and then you can then build. If this, you can build more like a working plan. If this is the pattern of conversation we're seeing, these are different response, or we're expecting that this is the kind of conversations. I'm trying to bring it home. These are the kind of conversations that are ongoing, that are currently on in our organization. And if this continues, there's 20% chances that this will happen. There's 40% chances that thing will happen and the likes. The next thing you do is then what should you now do? You see the train. It moves from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive and then to prescriptive. Because when you predicted, you don't want to just sit down. You need to be able to put the heart to say, what do I do or what do we need to do? And in these different phases, you know, they are my time when you get to the prescriptive, what do you do? Sometimes you need to apply some computational models, you know, I mean, just to bring it home, it could be using basic Python, you know, to analyze the data appropriately. I mean, you could even be using your SQL. SQL is a great tool, you know, to use, and it's easy to learn. You know, I mean, as an HR professional, HR leader, you might not be armed with these tools. It might not be your go-to, but sometimes you also need to understand the logic on how this system works. Even if it's the logic, it's important. It helps you see things better. You won't have your data analyst come and BS you, you know, or someone else BS you like that, because you know the thinking behind these things and how it works. I mean, that's like this. Even when I conduct HR trainings, what I say to HR, sometimes HR leaders don't, the basic thing is Excel is fine, maybe a Power BI, SQL, okay, simple enough and all. But what I say to them is, I mean, you just need to understand the thinking, the logic, you know, just understand it. You don't necessarily need to be able to, you know, to use them, because you have people who will be doing these things for you. But when you understand the logic, you can't be biased, and you also make informed decision. The next thing is exit interview and retention data. Very important. It helps you shape who is coming and then how to keep, in case you have a lot of attritions, if you reduce that, you know, to a very large extent. So, I mean, what's the outcome, you know, when you implement the data-driven HR in your organization? You have improved hiring and talent acquisition. You have high employee retention and satisfaction. You have your performance management system would be well improved. And then you have a very robust, you know, workforce planning strategies or outline for your organization. I mean, this is typically more like a dashboard where you can, when you have those data, this was, I think, analyzed with Power BI, or yeah, you can see the different outcomes, and then it helps you know what to do, you know, on a glance. So you might collect this data from different sources like I had explained, but you sometimes just want to see the dashboard that gives you everything in one pictorially, and then you can, you know, generate insight from it and then begin to implement as needed. Then, I mean, I won't leave you without talking about each of the different outlines. I included implementation frameworks so that, I mean, it's not just talking the talk, but showing how do you do this in case you are not doing it. For some organizations on the call, if you represent, I'm sure we represent different organizations. Yeah, you are actually, you have some of these processes, but maybe not robust enough, or I mean, different ways to look at it. You know, one is you need a centralized workforce data. It's called a master data. You know, you can have pockets of data in different units, but you need a master data that, you know, coalesces these data together. You can see everything in one. So the feeds, you know, you have pockets of data in different units, but you then need everything to feed into one central data where you can see. I mean, you have data analysts that work with you or work for you, or whatever the case is, but you want to see what we have here, like a dashboard, you know, an automated dashboard, a reporting system that you see the movement per time. You can automate it daily, you can automate it weekly, but you see the movement per time, and it's helping you look at, giving you insight on what to do. It's important. And the next thing is develop an advanced visualization tools, right? You could use a Power BI, you could use a Tableau, or whichever one works, or even an Excel. Sometimes you can actually use it. I mean, because of course, the Denipo Academy will train on all these tools. And I think, I don't know if Albert will share, you know, give people, everyone who's on the call, the opportunity to take a HR course within the next 48 hours. You sign up and take the course at no cost. But I mean, I think it will explain that if that's your interest. Then the next thing is also you integrate scenario planning capabilities, because everything, if you build models, you will know that it's not one size fits all. There are different scenarios. You know, if it happens to this particular unit, if it happens to that unit, if it happens to people within this different age class, because you find out that people, employees in different age category will behave differently at different points in time. So when you're working on those kind of data, you will find patterns, you know, so you need to build scenario. If it happens to a female, what should we do? If it happens to a male, what should we do? If it happens to people in this age, what should we do? If it happens in this particular time, because time also is also critical when it comes to data. Things happen at different points in time. Then the final thing to do is you have to, everything you're doing, Yeah, I think Albert will share that. Yeah, give room for everyone who participate here to take a free challenge discourse, just to ensure that we're armed enough for this for this training. It's actually very, very important. Then if you've done everything, you need to learn how to predict. You might even look at the dashboard, and then from your experience, the domain knowledge that you have, right? You can then begin to predict, okay, if this happens, this is a likely thing that we could do. You could likely thing that could happen, and then work with your team to see what's the possible outcome, and implement. It's very important. So when you are sure, you have the data, you have the insights on what to do, you are clear. Evidence-based HR, remember that. Try to implement is very important. And I mean, who's doing it? MasterCard is a case study, and try to do this so that we see that the organizations that are actually doing this, and then if you're not doing this, that you are maybe kind of shortchanging yourself, or you're not staying ahead, of what's going on. The Okay, MasterCard is doing this, and what we see in terms of improvements in succession planning accuracy, 45%, and then also reduction in regrettable attrition. Some attrition, you lose some talents you should not lose. They're able to reduce that by 30%, and that these are significant numbers. And you know how much it costs you more to recruit a new talent than saving the one that you already have. It costs you more. So think about it in that light. Moving into diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a key conversation that we need to, put in place, in our different processes in our respective organization. The key outcome here is diversity initiatives, have demonstrated clear business impact. I mean, that's where I'm going to. I know we've done a lot around DEI, so I'm not going to belabor on that, but I'm just trying to draw out the insights. According to McKinsey, the organizations who have diverse people, improve their profitability by 35% on the average. So, I mean, while as a professional, what are you doing for your organization? So, regardless of everything you do, is to drive bottom line. You can drive top line. You also need to drive bottom line, because there are some operational expense that you need to find a way to manage, and all. So that's where I'm going to, and then down to earnings, which is the bottom line at the end of the day, because that's what shareholders really care about at the end. Their net income, Yes. So how do you do this? You move from DEI programs to building it as a way of life in the organization, more like moving from programs to culture. So while you're designing those different DEI initiatives, how do you embed it into your different performance metrics, psychological safety protocols, utilize advanced analytics, and develop leadership behaviors? So how do you, the takeaway from this is, how do we move from thinking about it as a program that, it's International Women's Day, I think that was last week, and then accelerated action, okay, fine, we've had that event, and then everybody moved on. No. How do we bring that back as a culture in our organizations? Because you have those programs, not because you want to spend in running events, no, but because you want to have a takeaway to infuse or embed into your processes. We can be lost in the groove of programs, but the takeaway from this is try to tie it back to how do you make it a lifestyle in your organization. I mean, because if you do that, you don't need to organize that program again in that light. What you're doing is more like trying to get either a feedback loop or a focus group session, or there's something else you want to address. So you save the costs. Think about cost saving. I save the cost of organizing this, in that light. So ensuring that it's something else you're trying to, a different problem you're trying to address, or you are trying to get feedbacks, on how to make the implementation better. So how do you do this? You conduct comprehensive inclusion audits across your employee lifecycle to identify gaps and opportunities. The next thing is that you develop inclusion capabilities, building programs. You implement belonging measurement system. And then you create an accountability mechanism. And who's doing this? Accenture is doing this really well with what they call the inclusion ecosystem. And what's the outcome? Increase in leadership diversity, improvement in innovation metrics by 28%. They'll be able to enhance employee engagement and retention, and also strengthen their brand reputation. I mean, because when you do that, a lot of people are your competitive advantage. They go out of they spend 9 to 5 or whatever time intervals they have, the contract they have with you. The pride of an employee is to be able to talk about where they work, I mean, and all. It's a pride. I work here. I'm a member of the Association of Allied Human Resource Professionals. That's a brand pride of being a member, So when you do this, you're able to have more voices where you are not, because the business will not be, the business is people, and even the leadership driving the business will not be in every place at a certain time or at different times, but the people who are who are affiliated will be able to sing the song for the organization. That's what you want: positive feedbacks and reviews. If you go on Twitter now and you see a negative feedback about a particular organization, I mean, as a business, not in the political climate that you find that nobody cares, even if they're dragged out, you are concerned because it affects your brand. So that's why this is important. I mean, Accenture is doing this a lot, and they've been able to prove that, AI-driven insights, when paired with human-centered leadership strategies, can significantly improve or enhance workplace diversity and innovation. Accenture has proved this, and I think you should also try to implement this in your organization as well, and also try to prove it, validate it in your own localized environment. Now we look at agile HR and change management. There are two models. There's an agile model, there's a traditional model. But more importantly, after this conversation, I'm sure we do. I take a lot of agile training, right? You need to infuse an agile way of working in your organization, because what it helps you do, it helps you stay competitive. I mean, you've heard me say this word countless number of times because it's very, very important. It helps you stay innovative and resilient. You find out in traditional HR models, I mean, rigid structure, this is how it's going to be. We can't shake this, and we can't retool. We're not flexible. And I think that's the word. You find out that you cannot adapt to changing technology when it comes, because technology will be changing. Workforce expectation and market dynamics. Markets will change. I can reel up, bring out different industries, and we can go to a discussion on how it has changed. You agree with me? If we call the sector, in fintech, you'll see, in even banks, you'll see, different changes at different times. How do you adapt? In the era of when you had a lot of jackpots and the likes, how the organization adapts, if you keep on staying with the philosophy of, I mean, this is how it's going to be, no flexibility in reshuffling how your workplace is being designed, then you find out that it might even go extinct. It might be bought out through a merger or acquisition. CBN can come and we can do some recapitalization. How do you stay, ahead of the curve? Now there's an agile shift that infuse flexibility, employee-centric decision-making, and continuous adaptation. There's this school of thought that the salespeople actually know a lot about what your customers think about than people sitting at the back office. So you need to really engage, integrate your workforce such that you are getting information. As an HR professional, you need to ensure that you're integrating these different units together. You need to know what's going on, gather those data, share different ways in which we can gather data in our organization, gather those data, one-on-one conversations. You need to understand what's going on so that you are competitive, innovative, and resilient. Now, what I talked about here is the key characteristics of an agile HR. One, iterative processes. You have to continuously review. You hear me say that word a lot. I'm sure we've heard about it countless number of times. Review and improve rather than following static and long-term plans. Some plans needs to be looked into. You need to review your plans. You find out that you get into a year, for instance, during COVID time, when we're doing 2019, you're doing a 2020 plan. You find out that some of the plans that you had when you came back 2020 first quarter, you had to change those plans because you never planned for hybrid workplace. I mean, you never knew that was going to know. I mean, to a very large extent, most organizations were resisting hybrid work style. But COVID, I mean, you had no choice because, I mean, everyone, you're in your house. It's just critical staff, that's where they were able to come into the workplace. And you find out that it was even a cost-saving strategy. I think it's a public news. So Andela did something like that, had to tie back from having physical and that saved them a lot of costs, So building an iterative process, the market most times would determine how you should take action. Market dynamics would, to a very large extent, and then you see that in movements in stock price, perception from the market and the likes. So you find out that you need to create a flexible, you have your plan, but at different phases, ensure that you build flexibility into it in case if this happen, what do we do? If that happen, what do we do? Next is cross-functional collaboration. HR needs to work with different departments to co-create policies and programs. You want to create policies, different policies for different action items, in your organization, but you don't want to do a one-size-fits-all. You need to integrate every other unit so that you're able to collect different perspectives to help you build what is robust enough, to ensure that you're agile enough to stay competitive. Moving from that is data-driven decision making. I said, all through this presentation, is data is key. Ensure that you actually take it serious. Another thing is employee centricity. You should ensure that you are employee centric. You need to see your employees as good stakeholders, not because you are paying them and then they have to work. I mean, of course, they know you are paying them, then they have to work, but you need to see them as critical stakeholders in keeping the business going. I mean, a lot of organizations have learned from this experience, like, oh, we are paying you, do whatever you want, do whatever I want to do with you, to saying that they need to ensure that they are more, they're talking to the employees, they understand their pain points, their well-being, welfare, and the likes. I mean, from a compensation perspective, make it more flexible, not one size fits all, skill driven, value adding, and all, so that you keep your system robust and active enough for whatever challenging times that might come, because challenging times will definitely come. Businesses will have their respective circles, business circles that you cannot, some things are beyond you, right? But if you work assiduously to ensure that you are agile enough as an HR professional, it helps you to help you, know what to do when it comes. You will not be perturbed. It won't shake you. You know that you are resilient enough to take on the challenge. I mean, the next is flexibility and adaptability, which I've talked about. And then when do you know you are agile enough? Flexible performance management, move away from annual reviews to continuous feedback and coaching. Yes, there's annual review. You need continuous feedback and coaching because you need your talent. You need your talent, and even it will cost you less to coach that talent to be better. If they want to be better, and that's a clause, right? Than getting a new talent. The hiring time, you might take, the losses that you might take, I know. But as HR professionals, we know how to do these things, right? But takeaway is continuous review and feedback. Next thing is dynamic talent acquisition, leveraging AI-driven recruitment tools for real-time hiring needs. You need that. I mean, there are different tools that we use. We should try as much as possible to harness that, properly. You can also engage training institutes. Any products that we train a lot of talents as well. For talents, ready-made talents that you can plug into your organization. That also helps reduce cost and also hiring time as well. And then adaptive learning and development, you have got to try as much as possible. I mean, we also do that at Enipro, working with organizations to ensure that they can keep their talent skilled enough. And sometimes we also co-create curriculums with organizations such that the training is tailored to your need. And then there's also a feedback loop, such that once you're done with the training, there's a follow-up to ensure on how the training is being implemented. These are like the things that, I mean, we also do. That shows that you're agile enough. When you're training, why are we training this talent? How does it tie into what's the return? How does it tie into the bottom line? Sometimes you're training the talent to increase its efficiency. It may not necessarily be tied with the profits to the profit center, right? But improving that efficiency could be attending to customers. That may not be, you may not see it as being tied to being a profit center, right? But being able to improve the experience with the customer actually would help maybe get more referrals or recommenders, from that customer to, get more clients into your business. That's another way to think about it. I know some of these things, we've heard them, at different forums, but what I'm trying to do is seeing how to think about it differently and how we also need to take them seriously, because we are in a very dynamic market environment. Things are changing rapidly. So change management, essentially, it's how do you implement these changes? You don't want to come in and then brute force, just implement the change in that they go. You need to be cognizant of your people, carry them along in the process. Let it be in stages such that they get, if currently maybe I'm used to Excel, and then you bring a particular solution and say, well, this is what I'm using today, then tomorrow we will run Office, so we're going to be using. That's not fair because you need people to understand the system. You need people. I mean, also remember that biases will be sometimes biases are built into the system. Your employee also has what they're also working on as well, and then you just want to push them to use a particular software. This software might be good, better than sliced bread, However, the manner in which it's been implemented is key. So develop people first approach. Frequent and transparent communication is key. Implement incrementally, create a continuous feedback loop, and then leadership buy-in and support. Leaders actively advocate for change and models that model the behavior expected of employees. I mean, we have seasoned HR professionals on the call who are also business leaders in different industries. A lot of mid-level, junior level, even senior level professionals are looking up to you. So you need to be able to, model that behavior such that, they are, just as we have thought leaders, they are inclined, to shaping their careers or how they approach their work based on what they see you do, in that regard. For instance, if you have a senior person in your organization talking about a particular tool, you'll be interested. Oh, really? My guy is doing this. I think I need to find out what this thing looks like. Gradually, it's more like building. You become more influential by the position that you've attained in your organization, and that actually helps, to a very large extent. So what we have here is example of agile change management in action. Things to take the takeaways from here is I'm trying to looking at the time. Please let me know how much time I have left. I'm looking at the time just and so that I know. Okay, let me know how much time I have left, so I know how to take on the. Because in my head I'm feeling like I'm taking a lot of time, so I need to. So I know how to.
You have 5 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. And now to condense the presentation. So the takeaway here is you need to test AI-driven tools in small teams before scaling company-wide. You need to also use real-time feedback, to tweak implementation strategies, and then you need to provide on-the-job trainings to help your employees. This is actually very important. Then looking at the business impacts, higher employee engagement and satisfaction, increased innovation and productivity, better talent retention, and stronger competitive advantage. As businesses continues to face disruptive changes, which driven by AI, automation, remote work, agile HR, and change management will be essential for navigating uncertainty and fostering a resilient workforce. And you find that companies that embrace flexibility, data-driven strategies, and employee empowerment will thrive in an evolving workplace. As a business, you want to thrive. As a business, you want to still be in existence. As a business, you want a very good looking balance sheet. I also want a happy workplace. And to do this, you need to ensure that you're agile enough, and then your change management processes are also intact. I'll just run through this. And what this slide is talking about is how looking at HR and leadership and HR strategic role. I've grouped it into different buckets. One is evolution of HR from being an administration to strategy. So you're looking at HR from the strategic function in business success. And 3 is looking at HR, the future of HR as a business leader. There are different things takeaways from this is your chief people officer needs to have a place in the boardroom. HR and AI collaboration is key. And you also need to infuse ESG, environmental, social, and governance into HR processes for purpose-driven strategies. They are very key. And how you implement it, it's a different ballgame entirely. It's a different presentation entirely, but you need to infuse that into your leadership process. And ensuring as a business leader, maybe you're a CEO on the call, you're a C-suite, right? And you don't have HR sitting, in that C-suite cadre. You need to rethink your organization structure to ensure that HR sits, as a member of the suite, the C-suite. It's very, very important. It's very, very important to drive continuity, business continuity, and better performance. Okay, we're looking at future skills and continuous learning. I'll just breeze through this. When hiring, right, you need to ensure you're designing your system and processes around skill sets. There are 3 different phases here, right? When you build the business case for skills, you deconstruct and determine your needs appropriately, and then you manage the transition and change. So what do forward-thinking organizations do? One is they map out current capabilities against future business requirements. What do we need? What capabilities do we require? Next is to implement skill adjacent pathway for internal mobility. So you are giving room for, what this says is they're giving room for internal people to move, based on the skills they've been able to develop, acquire over time. And next is you're leveraging AI to identify hidden capabilities within your workforce. You can actually do that. You can run a competency test. It could even be a survey. It could even be, through their managers and supervisors to understand gaps, delivery time on jobs, to know how best you can actually help your talent in your organization. And then you can also partner with the education institute. AnyPro is one, right? You can also partner with AnyPro when it comes to leveraging different upskilling your talents in different areas: digital transformation, HR analytics, data analytics, and the likes. So implementation framework here: develop skill taxonomy, build an internal talent marketplace. You want to ensure that you have internal opportunities for skills that you have within the organization. I'm sure a lot of organizations do this. Before you put out a load, you want to be sure that within the organization that you have talents who can actually take up this. So you need to do that to the very large extent, to motivate your employees internally. Also implement skill assessment technologies. We have that at AnyPro, so you can work with us, in implementing that, and also create credentials partnerships. People want to say that they are moving up in their career. So doing that, yes, I have talked to the organizers for the slide. Yes, it's they have that. You can talk to them. That I'm sure you have more information. Finally, just to crown it up, I work with AnyPro here, and we do this. So I had to use case study because we are doing this, for skill assessment platform. What we've seen is candidate diversity metrics improved by 40%, and also early stage turnover, due to improved skills, right? In closing, AnyPro's comprehensive skill taxonomy and credential verification systems enables companies to validate candidate capability with 95% accuracy. We deployed a lot of resources to build these platforms to ensure that we are working well with our different partners that work with us, making it a critical for transitioning to skill-based talent acquisition. And that is what we preach. You need skill-based talents. You need skill-based talents. You need skill-based talents. Thank you. I hope I stay within the 5 minutes you gave me. Thank you. Thank you. I'm open to questions. If you have any, we can take questions. And sorry, I had to rush through some parts given the time that I had. It's actually a long presentation, Yeah. Thank you. Over to the Over to
Thank
the
you.
coordinators.
Thank you, Jesse. A round of applause for Jesse, virtual applause or physical applause for Jesse. Thank you, we appreciate it. It's really an insightful time taking us through the future of HR and how we can transform the workplace. Please, the room is open for question now. Jesse is here to answer any question you have regarding the future of HR. Question time. Question, we have a lot of nuggets. The people are the business. We have a lot of nuggets to take away. So please, if you have any question before we call it a day, I have a big point. HR is shifting from administrative role to strategic decision-making process. We have a whole lot of takeaways now. Okay, please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. I can see Oluwatobiloba's hand up. Kindly unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. For how you're doing this meeting? Let me speak about Telecom Lagos State. Thank you very much, Mr. Jesse, for that wonderful presentation. Well done, sir. Now, I have a question. Now, what do you do as a human resource personnel in an organization where now it's a small firm? Now, your boss now, which happens to be the CEO and the COO of the business, now you want to hire, okay, for a vacancy, and it gives you the description, okay, for the job role. Now you recruited somebody, and you notice that after like a month, he began to come up with other descriptions, like other responsibilities for these people, you know. And when you talk to him, he says, "And like I don't know." But so in that kind of you, how do you handle such as a human resource person? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think I would also call on Dr. Mike as well, another Albert as well, to chime in on this, because I know there are different experiences that would come in to answering this question. I mean, first, the culture thing, right? I mean, what I mean is a culture thing is it's ingrained in the business, and perhaps maybe the business has not a deep pocket business, for the better use of words. I mean, as an HR person, it's properly defining the role, right? The role and the JD required for that particular position, and then the compensation per time, you know, and then having a conversation with the MD, CHRO, HR managers you had called, as you have described, before the hiring process, to properly explain to sticking with the contracts, you know, so that it helps boost motivation. And if there's going to be any other additions, they should work out plans for better compensation, such that, I mean, the employee could have the skill set to do it, you know, but if he's motivated enough to do it, we would do it. But of course, there's some things that, of course, employees might want to do, you know, for especially when once it's a lateral job function, right? Might want to do it, you know, but you have to have that discussion before hiring, before going to the hiring process with the MD, CEO. I mean, I'm trying to just cluster the cap. Have that conversation. The conversation needs to happen before the recruitment process. And should it, after the recruitment process, you find that happening again, you also need to tie it back and let the boss, let me use the boss that has all the titles, you know, understand the implication of this over time. I know there's a place of, I mean, taking advantage of talent, but I mean, you also need to, as an HR professional, I mean, that is who you are. That's the cap you wear in the organization. So let him know the implication over time. Because I know of this situation in one asset management firm, right, where employees are moved around to roles where, I mean, giving extra responsibilities, even to maybe someone who is in research is maybe doing sales, or someone is in, I mean, that kind of movements. And you find out that there are a lot of attrition, you know, people wanting to, at every opportunity to move, you find them moving. So these are the things that you need to, I mean, of course, it might be like a one-man business and the likes, like you have mentioned. So he has the authority and the power, but he should also know that it's at the detriment of his business over time.
Thank you
Yeah, I
very
don't know if
much.
that answers your
Thank you.
question. Yes, you need
Yeah,
to
thank
let
you.
him know of the
That
risk.
was helpful.
Yeah, capital flight risk. Yeah, I think that's the summary of that. I don't know if Dr.
Thank you
Michael
very
want
much.
to add to that, and maybe.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Jesse, thanks so much for the presentation. It's been an insightful one. I'll just say that the subject of culture is very delicate. It's culture goes beyond fanciful statements we write on our walls and all of that. It's more of the demonstration of beliefs, values, mindsets, and behaviors, So I would just say that culture is driven by leadership. So anything that the organization is going to do in terms of culture, leadership, you must secure leadership buying, alignment, support, and engagement. So that'll just be my contribution. And thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Michael.
I can see Sophia hands up. Thank you, Emo. Thank you, Jesse, for that answer. I hope Oluwatobiloba is good enough for the correspondences he got. So
Yes, I'm fine.
Sophia,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Sophia, can you unmute and ask your question, please?
Okay, good evening. Thank you for, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the
Please, you can.
presentation. It was really insightful. But I wanted to be sure, under change management, what is the first step? I want to believe that the first step is supposed to be leadership buying. Leadership buying, then communication and all that. So I was trying to look at, I don't know if you want to speak around that. I saw you are stated people first, communication and others. Then leadership was the last one. I don't know if you want to give clarity, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, this was not in that kind of order, right? So just explaining through the process. There are change management process like the ADCAR model, right? That you can deploy, when trying to know what's the first step, which is more like building awareness on what needs to be done. And that ties into what you say in terms of you want to get buy-in from leadership. You want to understand how your people would react to the change that is to be made, because of course at the end of the day it's either a top down or a bottom up, but you need to get the buy-in of the leaders, which is actually very important. So build awareness of this problem or this thing we need to implement. You get the buy-in of the leaders, right? So this people first approaches is what it speaks to essentially is you looking at it that this is going to impact our people, right? So you ensure that it's in alignment with the archetypes of the people you have in your organization. But definitely you need to get the buy-in of the organization, of the leadership rather. And this is not in that order, just to state that. It's not in that, this is the first thing you look at, the second thing you look at, just highlighted the different points. I don't know if you got that.
Okay, I got that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other question, please? Any question, please, before we call it a day? Udoshuku. Okay, Udoshi hand is up.
Okay, thank you. Put a question in the chat box. So I was going to ask, how do you switch to a skills-based organization?
Okay, thank you. Let me get to the slide you're talking about. I know I breezed through it. And that's the implementation. Sorry, 1 second. I want to speak with the slide popped up. Right there. Okay, I think I can't find it. Anyway, so how do you switch to a skill-based organization? First, you need to, from your hiring process, it starts with your hiring process. You want to hire for a role, right? You need to narrow down to what is needed, the skill set that is needed for that role. Sometimes you find out that organizations put out job roles, and you find out that it's really centered around the role, not the skills needed for that role, because skills actually evolve. For instance, there's a time where you didn't have Power BI, as a visualization tool, or people are not very up with maybe a SQL, or that's SQL, and you have people recruiting, you have organization recruiting for a data analyst, and maybe they were just focusing on just Excel. I want the data analyst and just Excel, not knowing that by time you gather more data, or if they begin to harness their data properly, it just goes beyond that basic being a data analyst and I just need to have Excel. So what's the takeaway? It starts with the first point of contact, which is recruiting talent. And if you have talent already, that you have employees already that is not skills based or worse not, right? The next thing you need to do, you need to conduct assessments on the employees that you have and how their skill is being tied to the overall business objective. If you have to conduct that thorough assessment, then you need to be critical about it, knowing the right skills needed for this particular role. And when that happens, you then begin to break down the role into different, and it's somewhere in the slide. I don't know, I'm moving too fast and I think it's here. You need to break down those, more like map out those skill sets for those different roles that you've identified. And when you do that, then two things will happen, right? The first thing is you have to create that awareness that we need you to, maybe you speak to those different talents to say that we need you to upscale in these different areas, or that might affect your stay in the organization. And two things you can do for that employee is to either send him for training, or maybe he trains himself, depending on, if I am that kind of employee, I don't need to wait for you to even train me if it's what I can afford, because this is my career. Now, when you do that, you find out that the DNA of the organization will be driven towards skill set, acquiring skills, needed skills. Because as the business needs is changing, they also know that, the business is key on skill sets, is extremely key on skill sets. Then they begin to fit into that culture of harnessing skills or optimizing their skills at every point in time. And because that would enable the organization to be competitive. If the business landscape shifts, it shifts with the landscape, not left behind. I don't know if that answers your question. Takeaway is the entry point. Then if you have your organization is not skilled based, then you need to conduct a thorough assessment and be critical about it, ensuring that every role is driven on skills. Every professional in those different roles mapped out on skills. And when you do that, then you communicate to the employees on, this is where we are going to, because you need to communicate, and then set a roadmap. By this time, when you communicate with them, by this time you need to have attained this, by this time you need to have attained this, by this time you need to have attained this skill set for this role. The next step is either you send them for training, or they go get those skills themselves, and then begin to map it, harness those skill sets into different. And you'll find out that in terms of efficiency, in terms of cost, you save more cost, you become more efficient, you become more agile as well. And overall, performance will be high, your system will be highly optimized, and you'll be competitive. And you also find out that as people learn, right, just as we've had this session, this is a learning session, a lot of bulbs are actually tweaking people's mind. This is that new things will begin to pop up that will help the organization move forward. Ultimately, you also have to design a feedback loop system to ensure that you are gathering feedbacks, taking feedbacks from the exercises that you've conducted. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please, just a quick one, and just my last question. Under skill base, I want to ask a direct question. Yeah, you have advertised a role, and in what the role you're looking out for are for data analysts. Now, someone has yes, the person saw the job description, but the person has OND. But over time, the person got deep into data analysis, that there is nothing the person cannot run back to back.
Okay.
Did you get my question?
Yes, I do. I did
Okay.
rather. Yes. I know I didn't get the final parts.
So
I got the brief,
final
but
part
the
is
axe.
the candidate applied. He or she saw the job description that normal would have said BSc in this. But the final point is that you need somebody that has a needed skill that understand critically. And this person has gone back to back, understand data analysis very well, but he or she has OND. What will you do?
Okay, so okay. I mean, this is a very great, it's a good question. If you are skilled based, if your organization is skilled based, right, your skills trumps over certificates. But notwithstanding, you also need to understand your client, the client that you currently operates in. You can give the person an opportunity, and this is my own opinion. You can give the person an opportunity if it does the job thoroughly, right? But also ensure that the person has, they look for the person upskilling. It could be their online education you can take to acquire maybe a BSc or what's not. You ensure that that part is being taken into consideration. Two things you do, two things that this is going to do for you. First thing is that you are netting the person's skills on that role. Second thing, I think there are three things. So you're giving the person an opportunity, you're netting the person's skills, you're also giving him a room to also improve over time. So you can take a chance. It's about deciding whether you want to take a chance on the person. If you don't have an alternative, right? Of course, because that also depends if you don't have an alternative. You're taking a chance on the person and also ensuring that the person knows that to keep being on those jobs, I know you have these skills, but you have to upgrade. I mean, letting the person know that we're taking a chance on you, but we require that in 2 years, in this year, you should have this, you should have that. So the person knows that the organization is heavy on this, but giving him a chance. And this is my own opinion, right, on your question. Except you have another talent who has other things that you're looking out for. Maybe the BSc, MSc, and all those different certificates. I think another way to also think about it is, what market are you serving? If you are a consulting firm, for instance, sometimes the talent you want to present to your clients needs those credentials, whether you like it or not. So that kind of talent might not be good for you enough to sell to your. For instance, a McKinsey, a Bain, a BCG, those Accenture, PwC, and the likes. What they sell is talent and credentials. For clients to a large extent, to be able to bid, to get big deals, right? So that kind of person might not fit, presenting to those different clients, because I mean, his perception is almost everything. He has the skill set, you can get the job and maybe does it back end, but in terms of selling your talent is most important. Then you might have to think about it differently. I don't know. I'm trying to give you two different scenarios, not think about it. I mean, if they have, Dr. Michael might want to contribute as well to this.
Yeah, EM's hand is raised. Yeah,
Okay, so let me contribute to it. It's good that the person has the skill, but they also need to upgrade whatever educational level that is required. So a very good example is, you see all the microfinance banks that we have in Nigeria. When the policy was passed that microfinance bank be established, the depth of knowledge that is required to run a microfinance bank is completely different from your conventional deposit money banks and all the merchant banks that we have. So the CBN and the CIBN had to go outside this country, get some study, understand exactly what that concept is all about, and then developed a certification program, which is run by the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. You have people who have worked in the conventional bank, they have their ACIB, they are fellow, okay? But if you decide to become an MD in a microfinance bank or become a head of department in a microfinance bank, it doesn't matter what you have, even with your PhD, you are required by law, by regulation, to write and pass that exam. And when you are appointed, you are given 3
Exactly,
years.
sir.
3 years, you must get that.
Exactly. That
If you
is
don't get it,
true.
they remove. You get it? So because this person has OND, yes, it's good. If they have all the skills, then they should also work towards improving themselves to get the appropriate qualification that is required for that level. You can give them a chance, yes, but there will be a condition. Okay, we take you on board, but within X number of time, you need to get that, which is exactly what CBN and the Chartered Institute of Bankers does for HODs of all the microfinance banks in the country. So if it's a requirement, let the person in has the skills, yes, but they must get that qualification. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's solid. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that answered my question, and that was exact what has happened. I just wanted to bring up that question because you were speaking on skilled base. We gave them timeline and they met the timeline. So just to let us know what the skills that are needed in the industry is really doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question.
Okay, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for the questions. Thank you, our guest speaker. Thank you, my co-moderators as well. We have actually come to the end of today's webinar. To access the certification, the certificates, please, the link has been shared. Go through the chat box and click on it for your certificate and for HRCI certification. I appreciate you all. How about, please, do we have any other announcements before we call it a wrap? How about any other announcements? Maybe for official program or something else we wish to share. Okay, the certificate can also be used for CIPM license renewal. For everyone ready to renew the CIPM license renewal upgrade, this certification works well for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Emo. Thank you, Jesse. This is 8 p.m. Nigeria time. I appreciate you. I want to say a big thank you for your time. And that was an insightful presentation. I appreciate you. We'll be seeing more of him. Let's give him a round of applause and let's appreciate him by dropping in the chat box to say thank you to guest speaker of today and thank you to the management of AEHRP. We appreciate you and we love you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. See you next time. Cheers.